Welcome to CGTN, everyone. You're looking at live pictures coming out of the presidential palace in Hanoi, Vietnam, where a welcoming ceremony is being held in the honor of visiting Chinese President Xi Jinping. The Chinese president arrived in Hanoi, Vietnam earlier today. He has a very packed schedule. We're keeping an eye out on the activities in Hanoi in honor of visiting Chinese President Xi Jinping. He has a very packed schedule today. He will soon meet with Nguyen Phu Trong, General Secretary of the Communist Party of Vietnam Central Committee, at the Presidential Palace in Hanoi. We will, of course, bring you all the latest details, including live pictures from the Presidential Palace as they become available. The leaders will have a lot to talk about, including politics, security, practical cooperation, among other things. They will also explore the prospect of building a China-Vietnam community with a shared future. Ahead of the visit, Vietnam's Nam Dan newspaper published a signed article by Xi. In that article, Xi said the two sides have conducted exchanges with mutual trust, enhanced common interests with mutually beneficial cooperation, grown closer through friendly exchanges, and treated each other with sincerity. He said China hopes the two nations will promote the building of a China-Vietnam community with a shared future that carries strategic significance. To do so, Xi said the two sides need to maintain strategic communication and make good use of their complementary strengths. The two countries should step up friendly exchanges, properly manage differences, and expand consensus. China to Vietnam party-to-party ties have been significantly enhanced over the past decade. Now the two countries aim to forge greater solidarity and deeper cooperation. CGTN's Zhang Dan reviews the high-level exchanges.
In March 2013, Xi Jinping, General Secretary of the Communist Party of China Central Committee, held a phone call with his Vietnamese counterpart, Nguyen Phu Trong. They stressed further promotion of relations between the two parties and the two countries. In April 2015, Nguyen Phu Trong met Xi Jinping during his official visit to China. The two sides vowed to continue efforts to learn from each other and to inject new vitality into the cause of socialist construction. They also stressed the cooperation plan between their parties. 7 months later, Xi Jinping paid a state visit to Vietnam. The two sides achieved consensus that the future and destiny of their socialist causes are closely linked, and they should deepen cooperation in various fields. The two party leaders also visited the other's country in 2017. In Beijing in January, Xi Jinping and Nguyen Phu Trong called for regular contact between the top party and state leaders. They also identified several key fields for future cooperation, such as between political parties, diplomacy, security, trade, youth exchange, and border management. Xi Jinping was in Vietnam in November. The two sides pledged to step up exchanges of experience in governance of party and state. Nguyen Phu Chong's latest official visit to China was made in the autumn of 2022. Xi Jinping stressed the need for both sides to stay committed to the socialist orientation. Nguyen said the achievements made by the CPC provided precious experience for other developing countries, especially those following the path of socialism. And Vietnam's Communist Party chief received China's Friendship Medal. The other inter-party exchanges cover a great range of fields. For instance, last month, China's top anti-graft official Li Xi held talks with Tran Kam Tu, the head of the CPV Committee's Inspection Commission. They vowed to enhance exchanges and deepen anti-corruption cooperation. Zhang Dan, CGTN.
And for more insights on this, I'm now joined in the studio by Rong Ying, Vice President of the China Institute of International Studies, and Li Yong, Chief Researcher of DNC think tank. Gentlemen, fantastic to have both of you on our special coverage today. Just now, we saw final preparations underway for that welcome ceremony being rolled out for visiting Chinese president. He will be meeting with the General Secretary of Vietnam's Communist Party Central Committee. He will be meeting the country's president, prime minister, chairman of the National Assembly. Mr. Li, let me start with you, what do you make of the significance of this trip? I mean, the two nations already have a very high-level diplomatic relationship, comprehensive strategic partnership, cooperative partnership,
Right.
both sides have had for the last 15 years. What can we expect this time?
First, I think it is very important, for the for the two countries, the top leaders to meet, through this visit, and it's a demonstration of the ongoing relationship and the communications, between the top leadership about the future development of the two countries. Second, we need to look at the broader context of the global situation, which is basically characterized by volatility, complexity, uncertainty, ambiguity, and so on and so forth. And I think, this trip is going to continue the friendship and trust, and specifically, to seek stability out of volatility, to seek simplicity, which is, not, you cannot really understand by simple, but, which is, I think it is more out of the complexity, meaning that, we don't really want to be involved in those, complexities of global geopolitical, tensions and so on and so forth, and seek certainty out of the global economic uncertainty, and lastly, seek clarity in terms of the future path of the relations out of the general overall ambiguity of the global situation. So I think this is very, very important visit. I think it is going to chart, the future development path of the economic trade relations and, of course, the bilateral relations between the two countries, which I think is very, very important and positive.
Mr. Rong, it surely is a continuation of the already very high-level and frequent exchanges by leaders by both countries. Why do they see each other eye to eye? I mean, is it simply because they share similar political systems? Are they seeing eye to eye to each other because they have their eyes focused on the same thing, the economic development here? Or, as Mr. Lee mentioned, they sort of want to steer clear of the regional conflicts and the tensions and to really focus on what is important for Vietnam and for China. What do you think?
Yeah, all the factors are very much important in the sense that the two leaders and the two states and also the two parties need to keep frequent communication and talks, not only in terms of the bilateral relationship, which is, as you rightly said, it's in a very good shape, but more importantly, update to adapt to the changing situation in the region and beyond. As President Xi said when he arrived, that he is expecting to have conversations, strategic communication with the leadership of Vietnam on issues that are of overall strategic and long-term importance, and set out the direction for the future. So I thought that it's indeed a very important visit, and it is going to influence, certainly, shape not only the bilateral relationship, but also for, the region and the world at large. After all, China fully recognized the importance of Vietnam as a very important member of Asian countries, and also an important member of ASEAN. So I think this is the significance and importance of it.
I think the key word here really is strategic, as leaders from both countries try to map out a blueprint for future cooperation between China and Vietnam. Mr. Lee, how do you understand the word strategic here? What would constitute a strategic direction for China and Vietnam going forward from this point? They're building on that very solid political trust, which is embodied by the frequent exchanges we talked about. But as they map out the next big thing for these two countries, what would be something strategic for both China and Vietnam?
Well, I think this is really a good question because, any countries, when they, develop bilateral relations, they need to have a strategic view with regard, to which direction, for example, the relationship should go. How close, for example, the relationship should be, and what, will be happening, for example, in maintaining the strategic relations, and what are the pillars, for example. So I think, the strategic implications of the relationship really mean, those things. For example, we may have a strategic fit, which I think the both countries share. For example, regional stability, regional peace, and regional economic development and prosperity. Those are the strategic consensus that we have established in the past, and I think we need to reconfirm, particularly going forward. Amid the increasingly complicated global situation, we need to have that kind of a consensus, an agreement, of course. So I think, if we talk, anything, apart from this, this is going to be the top priority. I think the both leaders of the two countries, need to establish. Of course, this is going to be on the basis of a past consensus. So this strategic consensus and agreement are going to be the foundation of future, development of the bilateral relations. So I think that is what, the strategic relations means. And of course, if you look at the written text of Xi Jinping's article published in Vietnam, basically, I think, the general idea is pointing to that direction. We need to develop bilateral relations that have strategic implications.
If we just rewind back to last year, Nguyen Phu Trong was the first foreign leader to visit China after Beijing concluded its 20th Party Congress. For sure, that was a message, that was a signal of Vietnam reaching out to express its friendliness towards China. How important was that step, and what does it say about what Vietnam wants from China, Mr. Roh?
Well, of course, I think Vietnamese government, the party in particular, are very much in a position or wanted to know what happens, the latest ideas, thinkings in terms of the party. The 20th Party Congress of China, the CPC, has been so important. It not only, I think, will decide the next 5, even more. And also, I think some new ideas, new concept, for example, the Chinese approach to modernization and others. But the more important that I think, as far as Vietnam is concerned, they also would like to have meet the new leadership. So that visit, the visit 1 year ago, was so important. And it is also, I think, a demonstration of this uniqueness, a kind of a privilege to some extent, that has been Chinese Communist Party, the CPC, that accorded to Vietnam. I cannot think any other party or other country that could have that privilege or that treatment. But of course, it's also related to the General Secretary of Vietnam. Himself, he promised that he would come as a first guest, to make his first visit to China after the conclusion of Party Congress. So these are not only the reality of the demonstration of the closeness of this, uniqueness of religion, but more importantly, I think, a very strong message of solidarity, of kind of togetherness, and more importantly, a kind of a shared sort of belief, shared as kind of a support by a very important neighbor of China towards, China's sort of new leadership, new thinkings, and new sort of approach to pursue its modern, and its readiness to work together with China to pursue their sort of respective goals for development. So a lot of symbolism, but also a lot of, I think, very much important in terms of substance.
Ms. Lee, what are your thoughts on this? we talked a lot about sharing. China and Vietnam, they share a border, they share similar political systems. The party leaders are close. They have exchanged ideas very frequently. Based on this and based on what Mr. Rong said, Vietnam looking up to China in many cases as a model of success. Do you feel like Vietnam is copying the Chinese model? What parts of the Chinese model does Vietnam think are applicable to the Vietnamese condition? What does Vietnam want to learn from China the most? The Chinese experience, the Chinese formula, the Chinese model, the Chinese example. What are your thoughts on this?
Well, I think, each country has its unique conditions.
For sure.
For sure. And I don't think it is a kind of a direct copy of the developed models, whatever. I think, the important thing for the two countries to work together, basically is on the basis of complementarity and synergy. And particularly in recent years, Vietnam wanted to accelerate its economic development. So, working with China is a kind of a, effort, to benefit from the relationship, but also a process of drawing, for example, experiences and lessons, from China, and again, this in this process, there's also a kind of a built-in, complementarity and a synergy, all the way through, the years to come. So that, I think, is what I see, why the two countries wanted to work together to develop their respective, comparative advantages, and and work together towards common prosperity. That's how I see this relationship. And of course, in the process, both countries can develop, their unique models of cooperation that can be, replicated, that can be, copied, in the process of developing, relationship with other countries.
Mr. Lee, let me stop you there for just a minute. I'll be back with you in a few moments' time. But it looks like the motorcade with the Chinese president is now pulling in closer to the presidential palace in Hanoi, where we understand a welcome ceremony will be held in his honor. If you're just joining us here on CGTN, you're looking at live pictures coming out of Hanoi, Vietnam, where Chinese President Xi Jinping has begun a state visit. He arrived earlier today with his wife, Madam Peng Liyuan, and on his schedule today, a meeting with his counterpart from the Communist Party of Vietnam. You see people lining the streets in a lot of places in Hanoi, actually, waving national flags from both countries, chanting welcome as the Chinese president's motorcade drives by. So you see a lot of excitement, friendly, enthusiastic sentiments across the streets in Hanoi. People excited to see where this important relationship is going next. Of course, the two sides have had a comprehensive strategic cooperative partnership for 15 long years. That is the highest status of diplomatic relations for Vietnam. And we've heard leaders say that they plan to elevate this relationship to an even higher point. And we're curious in finding out what that higher point represents. And just now you heard Mandarin hello from people lining up the streets to welcome the Chinese president, of course. And we're, of course, monitoring that welcome ceremony for you. Make sure you stay with us right here on CGTN. We will bring you more pictures and more details when they become available to us. Mr. Rong, how do you make of the friendly atmosphere there that we've been seeing since earlier today when the Chinese president arrived? I mean, this is on a person-to-person level. Vietnamese people, as we see, are quite friendly with the Chinese people. What is their general sentiment towards this visit in your imagination?
Yeah, I can see that the public, the crowded, and people line up in the street. They are beaming smile, waving flags, national flags of China and Vietnam, which is not easy to distinguish, right? red flag. Oh, most of them are red.
Is that inconsistent with your visits to Vietnam, because you have visited more than once?
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, we personally very much overwhelmed by the kind of sentiment, special sort of and closeness, togetherness, and I think this is certainly very much demonstrated as we have seen. And also, I think when President Xi arrived, I noticed that the top leadership of Vietnam, the Prime Minister, and also the two full ministers actually, so very high sort of ranking. It's a high sort of it's kind of treatment accorded to President Xi in terms of protocol. This is also very much a kind of a demonstration of the closeness and importance.
Let's turn back to what is happening inside the presidential palace. Now the Chinese anthem is being played. It's very there at the presidential palace. He has been received by Nguyen Phu Trong, General Secretary of the Communist Party of Vietnam, and will be honored with a 21-gun salute. The leaders will take a group photo in front of the palace before holding talks. I think we're able to see that whole process. And over the past decade, the top leaders of the Communist Party of China and Vietnam have remained a significant level of contact and exchanges. In March 2013, Xi Jinping held a phone call with Nguyen Phu Trong. They stressed further promotion of relations between the two parties and the two countries. And their exchanges certainly didn't stop there. In April 2015, Nguyen Phu Trong and Xi Jinping, during his official visit to China, they met. The two sides vowed to continue efforts to inject new vitality into the cause of socialist construction. And 7 months later, Xi Jinping paid a state visit to Vietnam. The two sides achieved consensus that the future and destiny of their socialist causes are closely linked, and they should deepen cooperation in various fields. The two party leaders also visited the other's country in 2017. That was the Chinese leader's last visit to Vietnam. Nguyen Phu Trong's latest official visit to China was made in the autumn of 2022. Xi Jinping stressed the need for both sides to stay committed to the socialist orientation. Nguyen Phu Trong said the achievements made by the CPC provided precious experience for other developing countries, especially those following the path of socialism. During that visit, he was awarded with China's Friendship Medal. Mr. Rong, what is your impression of this welcome ceremony so far?
Well, I can see certainly, as I said, that the President Xi and his entourage has been accorded the highest honor and representing the topmost importance attached by the Vietnamese party and the government to the visit. This is also very special indeed, as we are talking about the sentiments, talking about the crowds of the public line up, but equally important is look at the body languages of the two leaders, right?
That's especially important because the two leaders keep talking throughout the
true.
welcome ceremony, indicating that they know each other quite well.
That's right.
We just told our viewers about some of their exchanges since 2013. They were able to meet and exchange every couple of years. They kept a friendship going. Obviously, they know each other really well, and there's a personal level connection there that has enabled in-depth exchanges and conversations. This welcome ceremony is still continuing in the presidential palace in Hanoi, Vietnam. An important item on a very packed schedule for the visiting Chinese leader. The Chinese leader arrived earlier today with his wife, Madam Peng Liyuan, and it seems that they are now caught up in a conversation with Vietnamese leaders. There's certainly a lot of friendly sentiment around this visit as both sides really explore the prospect of further cooperation and to really map out a future direction of what some new cooperation areas might be. We understand these areas could be digital economy, green development. Of course, China is important to Vietnam on many different levels and many different dimensions. It's a critical market for Vietnam. Vietnam imports important industrial raw material from China, components from China. The processing and the assembling happens in Vietnam before the end products are exported to many countries in the West and in many parts of the world. Let's talk about their possible topics today, Mr. Rong. Obviously, the two leaders are now shaking hands and facing crowds. They're waving to the crowds. Both leaders and their spouses. Yeah, Mr. Rong, let's bring to our viewers' attention possible topics here. We understand 6 main areas, obviously politics, security, practical cooperation, maritime issues. Of course, some of these issues are more thornier than the others. What do you think will prioritize?
Well, certainly the political issues are very much important. As I said, that this relationship is more than state-to-state relationship. Rather, because both China and Vietnam are socialist country with Communist Party as the ruling party. So the policies formulated by the party, so consequently interaction at the party level or inter-party relations are more important, I would say even, or as equally important as state-to-state relationship. That's why I think President Xi this time actually he came, the visit, he came with 2 titles, right? The General Secretary of the Communist Party and also the President of the People's Republic of China. And in the case of Vietnam, I mean, they have different sort of different system. Well, you have the party, the general secretary, you have the state president, you have the prime minister, and also, of course, you have the speaker. But the important thing is that I think, as far as I can see, the welcome ceremony, the lineup, and include that the welcome ceremony at the party, we see that it seems that the Vietnamese, the parties, all the members almost, right? The parties and the state come out to receive President Xi. This is also very much special. This is, I think, indicating.
Right.
Yeah,
it looks like the Chinese leader is on the move again to his next agenda item. We understand closed-door meetings between the Chinese leader and Vietnamese leaders will happen next. We will bring you more details when they become available, so make sure you stay with us right here on CGTN. And this year marks the 15th anniversary of the establishment of the Comprehensive Strategic Cooperative Partnership between China and Vietnam. Since 2016, Vietnam has consistently remained China's largest trading partner within the ASEAN region. Official data reveals that during the first 11 months of this year, the total import and export volume between the two countries exceeded 1.45 trillion US dollars, up 3.6% on a yearly basis. Additionally, foreign trade between China and Vietnam reached a record high in November with over 160 billion yuan. Goods traded include computer components and lithium batteries and agricultural products such as oranges and grapes. There has also been a notable recovery in cross-border trade between the two countries. China has been Vietnam's biggest trading partner for many years, and Vietnam is China's largest trading partner in ASEAN. Bilateral trade came in at nearly 235 billion US dollars in 2022, up 2.1% on a yearly basis. And that marked the second consecutive year that bilateral trade surpassed 200 billion US dollars. The figure is set to surpass the $200 billion benchmark again this year, reaching 185 billion US dollars already in the first 10 months of this year. Cooperation in green development and digital economy are new points of growth between the two countries. Projects like the Hanoi Metro Line 2 and Vietnam's large waste-to-energy plant were both built by Chinese companies and have greatly benefited the lives of local people. The two countries also have jointly promoted the implementation of RCEP and the construction of the China-ASEAN Free Trade Zone 3.0. Now a look at Vietnam's food exports. Data shows that from January to October this year, Vietnam's fruit and vegetable exports reached 4.9 billion US dollars, and that marks a 78% jump compared to the same period last year. Among Vietnam's export destinations, China continues to hold the largest market share, accounting for 66% of Vietnamese food and vegetable exports. Our Olivia He took a trip to a Chinese supermarket in search of Vietnamese food products.
Hello everyone, it's Olivia here. Today I'm going to take on a challenge in this supermarket. I'm going to see if I can successfully fill my shopping trolley with our Vietnamese food. Let's go check it out.
Hello.
To ace this challenge, I've got a special guest to give me a hand. We start off in the durian section, where I'm a huge fan, but not so sure about him. Next, we move on to the jackfruit, which I personally think smells just as amazing as durian.
对，这款的话是草莓口味。
And now he's introducing me to some Vietnamese cheese. After filling my trolley, I can't wait to try out this food and discover the stories behind them.
It's so sweet, so nice. 确定不来这了，太好吃了。So I heard that durian is typically imported from Thailand, and I'm curious why the ones at Hema are from Vietnam.
榴莲呢，其实一款季节
Durian is one unique fruit that you can only get in certain seasons. So what we do is we really pick the best spot to import it from depending on the time of the year. And this year, we've gone ahead and set up a whole base in Vietnam just so we can make sure our customers get that fresh durian fix even during this specific season.
In the first 6 months of 2023, Vietnam's durian exports reached $876 million, marking an 18 times increase compared to the same period last year. Notably, approximately $835 million worth of durians were exported to China.
目前的话，榴莲和菠萝蜜是在盒马非常受欢迎的。
I believe that with ongoing policy support and improvement of the supply chain, a greater variety of high-quality Vietnamese fruits and unique foods will be introduced to domestic consumers in the future.
Now, for more on the Chinese president's trip, let's check in with CGTN reporter Dong Xue live in Hanoi. Dong Xue, a full welcome ceremony, a very hearty meet and greet at the presidential palace. Let's rewind a little bit. Earlier, tell us more about the airport's red carpet rollout. How did the welcome ceremony unfold?
Sure, Zhongshi. I am now actually standing at the presidential palace. So as you have mentioned earlier, President Xi Jinping is received a welcoming ceremony by the Vietnam General Secretary Nguyen Phu Trong here at the presidential palace. And let's rewind a little bit to the welcoming ceremony at the airport. We've seen students and business representatives among all the welcoming committee at the airport. There were crowds, cheering. They also put out the slogan saying, China-Vietnam friendship is about to elevate it. It's not only about the comrades, brothers, and friends. Well, that's having said that, this year marks the 15th anniversary of the comprehensive strategic cooperative partnership between China and Vietnam. And for President Xi's visit this time, he has an ambitious goal, which is to cement ties with his Vietnamese counterpart, ranging from political, economic, trade, and even tourism and cultural and people-to-people exchanges. And most importantly is that the two sides are expected to elevate the diplomatic relations to a higher degree. And Zhongshi, as you can probably see behind me, the welcoming ceremony has just wrapped up, and the President Xi has left the presidential palace and is going to have the bilateral talks with the General Secretary Nguyen Phu Trong right now. Zhongshi.
Yes, Dong Xue, we see that the president is on the move again for his next stop of the day, meeting with high-ranking Vietnamese leaders and officials. Talk to us also, Dong Xue, about the local community's expectations of this trip by the Chinese leader.
Sure. We arrived 2 days ahead of President Xi's visit. So I went down to the street in Hanoi and asked the people about their expectations of President Xi's state visit. Well, I asked a dozen of people. I was surprised not only about the number of people who are aware of President Xi's visit, but more importantly, they've all called for strengthening cooperation between China and Vietnam. For example, there was one senior lady. She told me that she regards President Xi as a great leader for a socialist country, and she even said that she hopes China could take care of his socialist neighboring country, Vietnam. And she also called for strengthening cooperation, further cooperation between the two countries. 周时。
All right, CGTN reporter Dong Xue live for us in Hanoi, Vietnam. Dong Xue, thank you so much for that update. And over the past decade, trade ties between China and Vietnam have grown significantly. While the two nations are well connected by land and sea, Vietnam is now actively focusing on enhancing rail connectivity. Our Mira Lu visits a train station in Hanoi to find out how it's being achieved.
Vietnam already has rail connections to China, but the system is archaic and limited in capacity. It also lacks interoperability. Trains have to stop at the border and transfer goods to domestic services, reducing the efficiency of rail as a mode of transport. Both countries are actively seeking solutions to overcome these hurdles. A recently launched freight train service between Shijiazhuang in China and Hanoi is one such example. It reduces travel time by half and helps establish better connectivity between Hanoi and northern China, a strategic location for Vietnamese goods to go beyond the Chinese border.
Chuyến tàu này thì nó sẽ giúp cho các cái doanh nghiệp hai nước.
This train gives businesses of the two countries better opportunities to trade goods. The reason is that Hebei is a province located deep inland, far from seaports. The freight train's travel time from Shijiazhuang to Yanbian or Yanbian to Shijiazhuang is 6 days, compared to shipping by sea, which takes 13 to 14 days.
6 ngày và so với vận chuyển đường biển thì thông thường mất từ 13 đến 14 ngày.
Here in the Yanbian station in Hanoi, containers of fresh food and food products are being transported to China. On the other way, steel and raw materials for the textile and manufacturing industries come back to fuel the Vietnamese economy. Operators say they have witnessed an annual growth of 30% since 2017 till last year. Analysts say that despite enjoying the advantage of its proximity to China, Vietnam has not fully capitalized on its potential.
The trade relationship has been strong, but has been also limited due to not enough trading routes. Laos, for example, has profited much more with a high-speed rail connection between Kunming and Vientiane. Vietnam hasn't been part of it. And it's true, this summer there has been a new freight train has launched a two-way freight and cargo shipment between Hanoi and Shijiazhuang in northern China. However, it cannot carry as much as these newer tracks.
Marco Foster expects China and Vietnam to potentially upgrade their underdeveloped rail lanes, especially through northern Vietnam's rare earth-rich areas. This upgrade will be strategic, as it would connect Vietnam's rare earth heartland to the country's top ports in the north. Mira Lu, CGTN, Hanoi.
Let's get back to my studio guests here, Mr. Li Yong and Rong Ying. Mr. Li, I just want to talk to you about one thing. We often hear about the complementary strengths between China and Vietnam, complementary advantages some people call. Help us understand what that means and how has that propelled the interdependence, the synergy between China and Vietnam?
Well, I think, the complementarity can be seen in different perspectives. One, I think it is the complementarity of different phases of development of the two countries. For example, Vietnam has just started its economic development, or great leap forward, so to speak. And China has developed, quite sophisticatedly and quite mature, in terms of the economic models and introduction of, for example, technologies and innovation and so on. So there, in that sense, there is a quite significant level of complementarity. And in terms of the, the resources, for example, Vietnam is basically more, agricultural oriented in terms of development. Of course, the Vietnamese government, have a strategic focus on industrialization.
Mr. Li, I'm so sorry to interrupt. We're running out of time here on this broadcast, but hold that thought. We could have more chances to talk about this later on the network. All right, that is our special coverage for this hour. Thank you so much for your company, and our coverage on the Chinese leader's trip to Vietnam continues.